The air grows noticeably cooler now, doesn't it? A palpable hush descending upon these ancient woods as the last vestiges of twilight reluctantly surrender to a bruised, inky purple, leaving us here, a small, fragile circle of light huddled around the dancing flames. A perfect moment, perhaps, to unravel a tale spun from shadows and tears. For generations, across the vast sun-drenched plains and hidden valleys of Mexico and Central America, a name has been whispered, a spectral presence invoked with a mixture of reverence and dread near the flowing waters. It's the story of La Llorona, the weeping woman, a legend so deeply etched into the very soul of these lands that it feels less like a mere ghost story and more like a living, breathing part of the landscape itself. This isn't simply a campfire yarn to quicken the pulse. It's a profound cautionary whisper passed from mother to child, a spectral warning that coils and unfurls on the night winds, echoing a profound, inconsolable sorrow. As these embers glow and spark, sending fleeting constellations of light into the velvet canvas of the sky, we find ourselves on the very cusp of understanding a grief so immense, so utterly consuming, that it transcended the finality of death, condemning a spirit to an endless, tear-soaked quest. This exploration delves not just into the supernatural, but into the raw, aching depths of human despair, of desperate choices made in moments of unbearable anguish, and the unforgiving, eternal consequences that relentlessly follow. The tale says her origins, though shrouded in the mists of time, reach back through centuries, perhaps even to the turbulent, foundational era of colonial encounter, a time when ancient indigenous beliefs clashed with New World anxieties, shaping a figure who embodies both timeless maternal love and horrifying, irrevocable regret. This narrative pattern, this blending of cultures and sorrows, has often been noted by scholars from institutions like the Smithsonian Folklife Collections, who highlight how such figures serve as potent cultural mirrors. There's a certain distinct chill that settles in the air when one begins to ponder such depths of human emotion, especially when coupled with the supernatural. It's a coldness that isn't merely from the descending night air, but from the chilling echoes of a woman's ceaseless cry. She is said to still roam the misty riverbanks and the edges of quiet lakes, her spectral form often glimpsed, shrouded in tattered white, a lament forever on her lips, as she searches. For what exactly? If these enduring legends of spectral wanderings and profound human-tinged mysteries captivate your imagination, consider joining our circle by subscribing so you won't miss another story from the shadows and whispers of the past. The fire crackles, casting long, dancing figures into the impenetrable darkness of the surrounding trees. And in the rustling of the dry leaves or the distant, almost imperceptible murmur of a hidden stream, one might almost hear it. A faint, mournful wail carried on the breeze, a sound that speaks of a mother's eternal pain, a sorrow so deep it seems to have permeated the very landscape itself. It's a sound that promises no peace, only an endless searching grief, forever calling from the very edge of the darkness, a lament that will never truly fade. Now, As the fire settles into a quieter, more intimate crackle, let us draw a little closer, for the whispers that drift from the shadowed riverbanks tell a chilling, ancient story, the relentless, mournful echo of La Llorona, the weeping woman, a spectral figure whose sorrow has woven itself into the very fabric of the land across Mexico and Latin America. This isn't just a fleeting apparition, it's a persistent, chilling presence, a legend deeply rooted in the collective memory, often spoken of when the mist begins to cling heavy and low over the water at twilight. People whisper that she is forever bound to the rivers, lakes, and streams. Her spectral form, often described as draped in a tattered, flowing white gown, gliding silently along their edges, a lament eternally on her lips. It is her cry, that heart-rending, "Ay, mis hijos," "Oh, my children," that truly defines her. A sound that can carry on the night breeze, raising goosebumps on the skin and sending shivers down the spine of anyone who dares to venture too close to the water's edge after dark. The tale often begins with a beautiful young woman, perhaps named Maria, whose vanity or social aspirations led her astray, choosing a life of passion that would ultimately lead to unimaginable despair. In one common telling, after being scorned by a wealthy suitor or driven to madness by her own circumstances, she committed an unspeakable act, drowning her own beloved children in a fit of rage, despair, or even a desperate plea to win back a lover. Local records, while not confirming the supernatural, do hint at the tragic historical realities of infanticide driven by poverty or social stigma in colonial-era narratives, a grim backdrop against which such legends could take root and flourish. The depths of her regret, the agonizing realization of her terrible deed were so profound, so utterly consuming, that they tore her from the peace of the grave, condemning her to an eternal penance. Imagine, then, the raw, primal terror of hearing that wail, a sound of pure, unadulterated anguish rising from the shadowy reeds, knowing that she is endlessly searching, forever crying out for the children she tragically lost, a search that will never yield rest. If these ancient legends and their chilling mysteries resonate with your spirit, consider joining our growing community by subscribing, ensuring you never miss another journey into the heart of folklore's deepest shadows. Children are often warned, even to this day, to be home before nightfall, to steer clear of unsupervised riverbanks, lest the spectral hand of La Llorona, forever seeking a substitute for her lost ones, reach out from the inky darkness. It's a cautionary tale etched into the cultural consciousness, reminding all who hear it of the sacred bond between a mother and her children and the devastating consequences when that bond is broken, a sorrow that persists, echoing through the ages, carried on the very breath of the river itself. Before the distant ships ever cast their shadows upon these shores, before the new languages and new gods began to mingle with the old, the very earth here in Mexico and across these ancient lands already held tales of powerful, weeping women, spirits tied to the unforgiving currents of fate and the deep, life-giving waters. La Llorona, in her present form, is undeniably shaped by the crucible of colonial history, her story a stark reminder of a mother's profound, desperate choices in a world transformed. But the roots of her mournful cry run far deeper, reaching back into the rich, intricate tapestry of indigenous lore. People whispered of ancient goddesses and powerful female deities who, much like the weeping woman we know today, were often associated with water, fertility, and sometimes devastating grief or dire portents. There was, the tales say, a formidable mother figure whose lamentations were heard through the night, a chilling omen foreshadowing great suffering or the downfall of an era, her cries a haunting prophecy for her children. Ethnographers and cultural historians, meticulously sifting through ancient codices and oral traditions, have long noted these striking parallels, recognizing how the deeply embedded archetype of a lamenting female spirit by the water's edge formed a profound foundation upon which the colonial-era narratives of La Llorona would later build and adapt. A powerful testament to the enduring human experience of loss and the primal fear for one's offspring. So, you see, the essence of her sorrow, that primal, aching sense of parental love twisted by tragedy, was not entirely new. It was an echo, reborn and recontextualized, but undeniably ancient. As the fire casts its flickering light into the encroaching darkness, consider this: her endless search, her perpetual torment by the rivers and streams, might not just be for her lost children, but perhaps for a lost age, a lost way of life, an ancient grief that still seeps from the very soil and whispers on the wind. If you find yourself drawn to these deeper currents of folklore, to the ancient echoes that still resonate in our modern world, please consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss another journey into the heart of these timeless mysteries. It's a potent, chilling thought that the very waters, the same rivers and lakes that witness our modern lives, may have for centuries absorbed and carried the sorrow of these powerful female figures, a continuous lament, blending the grief of a colonial past with the timeless anguish of the land's first peoples, a mournful song that refuses to be silenced, forever woven into the mist and the murmur of the current. Her cry, then, is not just one woman's pain, but perhaps the collective sorrow of an entire age, flowing eternally onward, just like the river itself. Before the relentless wail, before the spectral grief bound her forever to the shadowy riverbanks, there existed a woman, people say, whose beauty was a legend in itself, a radiant, almost ethereal presence named Maria. In her youth, the tales whisper, she moved through her village with an undeniable grace, her eyes bright with a spark of vivacity that drew every gaze, her laughter like the clear ringing of tiny bells, and her dark hair a cascade that shimmered even in the dimmest light. This was a time when the world seemed to bend to her will, when admiration was as abundant as the wildflowers in spring. She was proud, yes, perhaps excessively so, her spirit filled with a longing for a life beyond the humble confines of her birthplace, a yearning for splendor and recognition that her simple existence could not satisfy. This fierce pride, that shining confidence, would ultimately become a double-edged sword, blinding her to certain truths and drawing her towards a destiny she could not foresee, a fate woven with both adoration and inevitable, crushing despair. It's said that she dismissed many a humble suitor, her heart set on someone of greater standing, a man whose wealth and position might elevate her beyond her present circumstances, a stark reflection of the social aspirations that sometimes ran deep within the colonial society of the time, as noted in various historical accounts from Mexican folklore archives. She reveled in the attention, in the power her charm wielded, perhaps never truly grasping the fragile line between admiration and envy, or the quiet, enduring strength found in simpler, truer affections. Her life, then, was a vibrant tapestry, bright with hope and burgeoning desires, a prelude to a drama that would consume her entirely. The wind rustles through the leaves, a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, as we imagine her basking in the sun, oblivious to the gathering storm on her horizon, unaware that the very river which mirrored her beauty would soon bear witness to her ultimate undoing. If these explorations into the complex human heart of ancient legends resonate with you, and you wish to unravel more tales of beauty and tragedy, consider subscribing to our channel and join us on these journeys into the profound. For within that radiant beauty and vibrant pride lay the seeds of a terrible, irreversible choice, a moment of profound desperation that would shatter her world, transforming Maria, the beloved beauty, into the eternal, weeping specter of the waterways, her laughter forever replaced by a haunting lament. As the embers glow with a softer, more intimate light, let us speak now of the fire that kindled within Maria's heart, a dangerous, consuming blaze that would ultimately engulf her entire world. For it was in those vibrant, bustling colonial towns where the old ways met the new that her striking beauty caught the eye of a wealthy Spanish caballero, a man of status and influence whose very presence spoke of a world far removed from Maria's humble village. The tales say he was handsome, with a bearing that commanded respect, and his gaze, when it fell upon Maria, was filled with a potent admiration that she had long craved. Their love, if one could call it that, ignited quickly, a passionate, all-consuming affair that crossed the rigid social divides of the time, sparking both adoration for Maria and intense, bitter envy from those who watched from the shadows. She bore him children, two precious beings whose innocent laughter filled her home, bringing a temporary, fragile joy that, for a time, overshadowed the whispered criticisms and the stark realities of their mismatched worlds. Yet, even amidst this fleeting happiness, a shadow lingered. The caballero, a man bound by his social standing, and perhaps never truly intending a lasting honorable commitment, began to drift away. His visits grew shorter, his affection cooled, as the pressures of his own family and society mounted, urging him to marry a woman of his proper class. A stark illustration of the deep-seated racial and class tensions that shaped the very fabric of colonial Latin American society, where such relationships were often deemed scandalous and unsustainable, as ethnographers from institutions like UNAM Cultural Studies have observed. Maria, blinded by love and pride, found herself increasingly isolated, a mother with children, but no husband, abandoned and scorned by the very man who had once promised her a world beyond her wildest dreams. The sweetness of their stolen moments turned to ash in her mouth, the vibrant tapestry of her life beginning to unravel thread by painful thread. If these compelling narratives of love, betrayal, and the unraveling of human fate continue to draw you deeper into the heart of folklore, please consider subscribing to our channel and join our circle as we peel back the layers of these enduring mysteries. For in his cruel withdrawal, in her growing desperation, and the gnawing fear of abandonment for herself and her innocent children, the stage was tragically set for the darkest chapter of Maria's story, a descent into an anguish so profound that it would forever bind her to the wailing spirit of La Llorona, a sorrow that would echo for eternity by the cold, indifferent waters. As the fire casts its restless shadows across our faces, let us speak now of the slow, agonizing withdrawal, the chilling retreat that began to consume Maria's fragile world, dimming the vibrant light that once defined her. The grand caballero, the very man who had ignited her heart and promised a life of splendor, began to visit less and less, his grand gestures replaced by a growing indifference, his once passionate gaze now distant, veiled. His whispered excuses grew thinner, more transparent, until the day came when the truth, cold, hard, and undeniable, crushed Maria's last remnants of hope. He had chosen, as society dictated, to marry a woman of his own class, a suitable bride who would secure his family's lineage and standing, leaving Maria and their 2 innocent children discarded, a scandalous footnote in his illustrious life. Imagine the crushing weight of that abandonment, the vibrant dreams of a shared future dissolving like mist in the morning sun, replaced by the stark, brutal reality of her new existence. She found herself utterly alone, ostracized by the very community that had once admired her beauty, now quick to judge her as a fallen woman, an unmarried mother, a pariah in a society deeply rooted in strict social and religious mores. Her once proud spirit, once so radiant, now buckled under the relentless pressure of their whispered condemnations and the unforgiving gaze of a world that offered no quarter. Local historical accounts, occasionally preserved in dusty Mexican folklore archives, sometimes allude to the immense social stigma and devastating poverty faced by women in similar circumstances during that harsh colonial era. A grim reminder that such personal tragedies were not isolated incidents, but a systemic consequence of a rigid social hierarchy. Maria's once beautiful home, once filled with the hopeful laughter of her children, became a prison of despair, echoing with her silent, bitter tears. The weight of her circumstances, the unbearable pain of betrayal, and the gnawing fear for her children's future gnawed at her, eroding her sanity, driving her to the very brink of an abyss from which there seemed no escape. If these poignant stories of human tragedy and the ancient roots of folklore stir your spirit, and you wish to delve deeper into the complex narratives that shape our collective imagination, consider joining our growing community by subscribing, and you'll never miss another compelling journey into the heart of these enduring mysteries. For it was in this profound, suffocating darkness, in the depths of her utter despair, and the relentless, unforgiving judgment of her world, that Maria, the once beloved beauty, was set upon a path that would transform her irrevocably into the wailing, eternally searching spirit of La Llorona, a sorrow destined to haunt the rivers forever. The shadows deepened around Maria, not just from the descending night, but from the suffocating darkness that had relentlessly begun to consume her very soul, twisting every fiber of her being with a venomous despair. Abandoned, disgraced, her heart a hollow chamber echoing with betrayal and with the gnawing, unbearable fear of her children's bleak and uncertain future pressing down upon her like a monolithic stone. The tale says Maria's once resilient mind finally fractured. In that terrible twilight moment, standing by the cool, indifferent river, the same river that had once mirrored her radiant beauty and witnessed her fleeting joys, she was driven to commit an act so utterly unspeakable, so profoundly misguided, and born of a mother's warped, desperate love, that the very waters seemed to recoil in horror, their ceaseless murmur turning into a hushed, horrified gasp. The river, which had flowed silently through her life as a backdrop to both happiness and sorrow, now became the unsuspecting, eternal witness to her ultimate, devastating error. In a fit of overwhelming, unreasoning grief, a madness brought on by the crushing weight of societal judgment and the cruel abandonment by the man she had loved, she led her innocent children, her precious little ones, into its cold, unforgiving embrace. In that instant, consumed by a desperate, fleeting belief that she was somehow sparing them a life of endless suffering and unbearable shame, she performed a terrible, irreversible deed, a twisted, misguided mercy that would forever condemn her. The chilling, almost unbearable silence that followed her desperate act was mercifully short-lived, for the horrifying, gut-wrenching clarity of what she had done crashed down upon her with the brutal force of a tidal wave. The warmth of her children's hands, the light in their trusting eyes, the very essence of their innocent lives, all extinguished by her own desperate hand. A primal, guttural scream tore from her throat, an unearthly wail of instant, agonizing regret, a sound that ripped through the heavy night air, echoed across the dark, swirling waters, and reverberated through the ancient, silent trees, striking terror into the heart of any living creature within earshot. The depths of her profound sin, the unbearable weight of her irreversible choice, seized her then with an iron grip, an all-consuming horror that would never again release its hold, not for an eternity. People whisper that she searched frantically along the riverbanks through the long, agonizing night, her beautiful gown now soaked and torn, her once proud face distorted by a grief beyond measure, her voice raw as she called out again and again for her lost children, her hijos, though they were forever beyond her reach. The relentless, unforgiving current had taken them, and in doing so had claimed a piece of Maria's very soul, condemning her to an eternal penance, a never-ending search. If these ancient legends, born from the crucible of human emotion, profound tragedy and dark history, speak to the deeper, more profound corners of your imagination, consider subscribing to our channel and join us as we continue to explore the timeless tales that haunt our world, offering insights into the human spirit's darkest moments and most enduring sorrows. For in that devastating moment by the river, Maria, the once radiant beauty, was utterly transformed, her laughter forever replaced by a haunting lament, her living presence consumed by the wailing spirit who would forever haunt the waterways, a living, spectral embodiment of inconsolable regret. forever searching for what she had so tragically, desperately cast away into the cold, dark depths. After that night of unbearable anguish, after her desperate, raw cries for her hijos had echoed unanswered across the silent, unforgiving waters, Maria's earthly existence could not, would not endure. The tale whispers that the sheer, crushing enormity of her deed, the horrifying realization of what she had so irrevocably done, was a weight too immense for any mortal heart or mind to bear. Some say, in their hushed recountings, that she cast herself into the very same river, seeking an end to the torment that ripped through her soul, a desperate, final act of a shattered woman consumed by her own despair. Others believe her spirit simply gave way, succumbing to the overwhelming flood of grief, regret, and the searing, unquenchable horror of her own actions, collapsing lifeless on the muddy bank as the first pale light of dawn began to creep over the horizon. Either way, her physical body found its end, a silent, tragic conclusion to a life that had spiraled from radiant beauty into the deepest, most unfathomable darkness. But this, my friends, was not the end of Maria's torment. Indeed, it was merely the beginning of an eternal penance, a curse far more agonizing than any earthly punishment. Her soul, it is said, found no solace, no peaceful rest, for it was denied entrance into the afterlife, barred from the heavens for her unforgivable sin, and eternally rejected by the earth, which refused to embrace a spirit so utterly burdened by such a heinous act. Therefore, she was condemned, transformed not into a peaceful memory, but into a tormented specter, forever bound to the watery realm where her children vanished, her spirit locked in an endless, fruitless search. The very air around us seems to grow colder as we contemplate such a fate, an eternal restlessness, a perpetual state of agonizing regret, forever replaying the horrific moment, forever calling for what is lost beyond all hope of retrieval. If these profound narratives of eternal consequence and the chilling echoes of tragic folklore stir your spirit, and you wish to journey deeper into the timeless mysteries that shape our world, then please consider subscribing to our channel and join us around this flickering fire for more tales from the shadows. For from that day forward, Maria, the once proud and beautiful woman, became the mournful, wailing spirit known as La Llorona, her cries destined to echo by the rivers and streams for all eternity, a haunting testament to a mother's devastating despair and the river's cold, eternal judgment. A sound that promises no peace, only an endless, searching grief, forever calling from the very edge of the darkness. After the cold, dark water had finally relinquished its hold on her, after her own despair had pulled her under and spat her back out, Maria found no solace, no earthly peace. The dawn that broke across the vast, ancient lands now called New Spain by its conquerors brought only a stark, blinding light to her unimaginable sin. They say, and these are tales woven into the very fabric of the land, passed down through generations like the river's own current, that when her ravaged body washed ashore, collapsing upon the muddy bank, something fundamental shifted within her soul. Her gasping, guttural sobs once merely human expressions of profound grief, began to resonate with an otherworldly quality, a desolate keening that tore through the pre-dawn mist. The earth itself seemed to recoil from her touch, refusing to offer the solace of a final resting place, while the heavens, witnessing her terrible act, remained stubbornly, eternally shut. She was condemned, you see, to a harrowing in-between, a spectral existence forever tethered to the very water that had witnessed her ultimate transgression and claimed her children. This was the moment Maria truly vanished, replaced instead by the enduring horror of La Llorona, the weeping woman. Her form, once flesh and blood, began to waver, to shimmer with an ethereal, luminous glow, clad in the perpetual, spectral white of her burial shroud, forever damp, forever trailing like mist over the river's surface. It's a chilling, timeless fate, one that local records and ethnographic studies across Mexico have consistently shown to be a powerful cautionary tale for communities, especially mothers, a warning against the consuming grip of despair and the desperate acts it can inspire. For centuries, her mournful figure has been seen, or perhaps just felt, a chilling presence by the misty riverbanks beneath a sorrowful moon, her outline indistinct, her movements a slow, agonizing dance of eternal search. If these stories stir something in your own spirit, a primal connection to the ancient whispers of the night, consider joining our campfire community by subscribing. We have many more journeys into the shadowy lore that clings to the edges of our world. Her endless lament, a heartbreaking wail of "Ay, mis hijos," drifts not only across that one fateful waterway, but through every winding river, every hidden arroyo, every moonlit shore where the reeds whisper secrets and the wind carries the echo of a lost mother's cry. She seeks what can never be returned, an unending quest for her vanished children, her agony etched into the very air, a haunting reminder that some losses transcend death, becoming an eternal scar upon the landscape. And so, listen closely tonight, beyond the crackle of our fire, to the gentle lapping of the water, the sigh of the distant trees. For the weeping woman may still be out there, her sorrow a chilling song carried on the night air, forever bound to the water, forever searching, forever crying. Once, Maria was irrevocably gone, swallowed by the grief and the water's cold embrace. Only one thing remained, a sound. Her human cries of anguish, though piercing, were nothing compared to what followed, what truly marked her as a being condemned to wander the in-between. They say, in hushed tones around campfires like ours, that the very first utterance to escape her transformed spectral lips was not a sob nor a scream, but a wail, a desolate, drawn-out keening that seemed to rip the very fabric of the night itself, chilling the air and rattling the very leaves on the trees. It was a sound unlike any heard before in the ancient valleys and along the winding rivers, carrying with it the unbearable weights of her transgression, the chilling echo of her lost children, and the eternal torment of her soul. This was the birth of the cry, the signature lament of La Llorona, a sound that would forever pierce the silence and settle deep in the bones of those unlucky enough to hear it. Imagine, if you can, standing on a misty riverbank, the air thick with damp earth, and the scent of distant pines, when a sound, both near and impossibly far, drifts to you, carried on a cold breeze. It's a sound that isn't quite human, yet holds every ounce of human anguish, a piercing, mournful shriek that carries the words, or perhaps just the agonizing feeling of, "Ay, mis hijos, oh, my children," a cry so steeped in an unimaginable sorrow that it settles deep in your spirit, refusing to be shaken. From that moment, that first terrible wail, her suffering became eternal, a terrifying introduction to her spectral existence that binds her to the waterways. It's a cry that ethnographers and folklorists have noted as a consistent, defining feature of the legend across Latin American cultures, a sonic warning woven into the very heart of this ancient cautionary tale. If these stories, these whispers from the shadows, captivate your imagination and make you wonder what else lies hidden in the twilight corners of our world, then consider joining our growing circle of listeners by subscribing. There are countless more tales waiting to be told. This chilling lament, this endless search, became her curse, her purpose, to wander the rivers and lakes where her children vanished, her spectral form perpetually seeking, her voice a perpetual, heart-wrenching echo of her crime. It is a cry not just of grief, but of profound, inescapable regret, the sound that reminds every listener of the terrible price of unchecked despair, a haunting melody that resonates from the colonial shadows to the present day, a constant, chilling presence in the quiet of the night. So, when the wind howls just so, or the river whispers a little too loudly in the darkness, listen closely, for her sorrowful wail might just be carried on the next breath of cold air, a timeless testament to a mother's eternal anguish. Her endless lament, that chilling, sorrowful cry, inevitably drew her to the very lifeblood of the land itself, its rivers, its silent lakes, and the winding veins of its canals. It's near these watery expanses, under the cloak of night or within the veiling mist of dawn, that her spectral form is most often glimpsed, a haunting figure forever bound to the places where her unimaginable tragedy unfolded. They say she appears as a woman clad in a shimmering, ethereal white gown, almost glowing in the soft, melancholy moonlight, a spectral shroud that billows around her like mist rising from the cold water. Her movements are fluid, unnatural, as if she glides just above the surface, her bare feet never quite touching the earth. Her gaze, if one can even discern her features through the veil of her sorrow, eternally fixed on the shifting currents or the dark, still depths below. It's a chilling image, isn't it? One that has resonated through centuries of folklore, its power undiminished. The air around these places of her appearance often grows noticeably colder, heavy with an inexplicable dread, and a silence descends that is deeper than any natural stillness, broken only by the distant croaking of frogs or the soft lapping of the water. And then, perhaps, her terrible whispered name. Ay, mis hijos. This pervasive attachment to water, the element that both witnessed and facilitated her crime, is a deeply rooted motif in Mexican folklore, as various cultural studies have noted. emphasizing its role as a liminal space, a threshold between worlds. If these timeless tales of wandering spirits and ancient warnings captivate your imagination and make you ponder the thin veil between our world and the next, consider joining our circle by subscribing. There's a vast ocean of stories waiting to be explored. Her presence is a perpetual, sorrowful vigil, a dramatic embodiment of endless search, a mother condemned to wander the watery edges of existence, forever searching for the children she tragically lost, her form a ghostly silhouette against the moonlit current, a chilling reminder of despair's ultimate price. So, when you find yourself by a quiet river at dusk, or gaze across a still lake as the mist begins to curl, remember the weeping woman, for her spirit still haunts those watery veins, a timeless figure of heartbreak and eternal regret, her story whispering on the wind that rustles through the reeds.
Of all the terrifying aspects of La Llorona, it is undoubtedly her cry, that mournful, soul-piercing wail that forms the chilling heart of her legend, a sound capable of inspiring profound, visceral fear in anyone who hears it. It's not just a cry of sadness, mind you, nor a simple human sob. This is something far older, far deeper, a primal lament that seems to resonate from the very depths of a tormented spirit. When it drifts across the water, carried on the night air, people often describe it as a sound that chills the very marrow in their bones. A sorrow so immense, it feels physically heavy, pressing down on the chest, stealing one's breath. But what is this cry truly? Is it a desperate plea, a mother's eternal appeal for her lost children to somehow return from the murky depths? Or is it a dire warning, a spectral siren for the careless, for those who wander too close to the river's edge in the darkness, particularly children? Some whisper that to hear her cry nearby means great danger, a prelude to misfortune, or even an encounter with the ghostly figure herself, her sorrowful visage appearing through the mist. Others believe that if her wail sounds distant, she is actually very near, and if it seems close, then she is far away, playing a cruel, deceptive trick with the perception of fear, a cunning strategy designed to unsettle and disorient, leaving listeners vulnerable. This ambiguous, mournful nature of her lament is precisely what makes it so deeply unsettling, cementing its place as a powerful cautionary tale woven into the collective consciousness of communities, reminding everyone of the terrible consequences of despair and rash acts. If these age-old tales of spectral warnings and the mysteries that lurk in the shadows captivate your thoughts, and you find yourself drawn to the eerie beauty of folklore, then consider joining our growing circle by subscribing. We have many more stories that whisper from the edges of the known world. Her voice, echoing through the moonlit valleys and along the winding rivers, serves as a timeless reminder of her eternal suffering, a perpetual search for what can never be found, an auditory embodiment of her ceaseless, agonizing regret. So, if you ever hear that chilling, drawn-out cry piercing the quiet of the night, heed its mournful call, for it is the very sound of a mother's unending anguish, forever bound to the watery veins of the land, forever seeking, forever crying for her lost children. That mournful, chilling wail, it isn't merely an echo of her eternal suffering, but a sound imbued with a deeper, more ancient purpose, particularly for the young ones, for children who, in their innocent curiosity, might be tempted by the secrets the night conceals, especially near the water's edge. Indeed, La Llorona's legend serves as a remarkably potent, albeit terrifying, cautionary tale, woven deeply into the fabric of many communities across Latin America. Parents and grandparents, with a hushed gravity in their voices, would often tell their little ones, "Beware the darkness, mijo, for La Llorona wanders the riverbanks when the moon is high, searching for her own lost children, and sometimes she mistakes others for her own." This chilling narrative effectively instilled a healthy, primal fear, keeping children from straying too close to the dangerous currents of rivers, the murky depths of lakes, or the winding paths of canals after dusk. It teaches lessons not only of safety around water, but also of obedience and the profound consequences of wandering off, emphasizing the importance of staying close to home within the protective embrace of family. It's a testament to the power of folklore, isn't it? How a story can literally save lives. Ethnographers and cultural historians have long noted how such tales, though steeped in the supernatural, perform vital social functions, acting as an informal but deeply effective means of transmitting crucial survival knowledge and moral guidance through generations, a truth embedded within the very essence of the narrative itself. If these ancient stories, these whispers from the shadows that teach profound lessons, captivate your spirit, and you yearn to explore more of the world's most enduring myths and legends, then consider joining our growing circle of listeners by subscribing. There's a vast, rich tapestry of human experience waiting to be uncovered. So, the next time you hear a strange sound carried on the night breeze, or if the mist curls a little too thick around the water at dusk, remember the weeping woman, a spectral guardian born of tragedy, her endless search a constant, mournful reminder, her chilling cry a timeless warning to children everywhere to heed the shadows and stay far from the perilous embrace of the dark, flowing waters. While La Llorona's haunting cries often served as a chilling warning for wandering children, her spectral vengeance, in many whispers around the glowing embers of a campfire, carried a darker, more specific purpose for certain adults, particularly for the unfaithful, for the men who mistreated women or abandoned their families without a second thought. It is said in hushed tones that Maria's own deep-seated betrayal by a man who valued status over love fueled an additional burning rage within her eternal sorrow, a spectral fury reserved for those who mirrored her own tormentor. Imagine a man, perhaps returning home late from a clandestine meeting, or stumbling, careless and inebriated, along a river path after a night of indiscretion. The air might grow heavy, a sudden, inexplicable chill wrapping around him, the moonlight seeming to dim, and then the sound. Not just a distant wail, but a mournful, accusatory cry, seeming to rise from the very water itself, often right behind him, carrying the weight of ancient anguish and reproach. This terrifying encounter, some tales suggest, is not always about physical harm, but about psychological torment, a profound, soul-shaking fear meant to haunt the guilty conscience, a ghostly mirror reflecting their own transgressions. It's a chilling reminder that some wrongs, especially those committed against the heart of a family, carry a price beyond the grave. Even colonial-era records hint at this aspect, showing how the legend adapted to societal concerns, becoming a powerful tool for social control and moral instruction within communities. Her spectral form, that mournful woman in white, might appear suddenly, her face obscured by a veil of sorrow, her eyes, perhaps, if one were brave or foolish enough to truly look, burning with a chilling, silent condemnation, a gaze that would freeze the blood. If these deep-rooted legends, these echoes from a forgotten past that still shape our present, capture your imagination and make you ponder the hidden forces at play in our world, then consider joining our circle of storytellers by subscribing. There are countless more tales of shadows and light waiting to be shared. Her endless search, therefore, is not just for her children, but also, in these tellings, a perpetual vigil against the injustices that tore her own life apart, a spectral arbiter of justice for the betrayed. So, if you ever find yourself by a lonely river at night, and your conscience is not entirely clear, listen closely to the wind that rustles the leaves and ripples the water, for La Llorona's cry might be meant specifically for you, a dreadful echo of your own hidden wrongs, a timeless warning carried on the moonlit air. Across the vast, winding waterways and through the hushed, moonlit valleys, countless individuals, from ancient times to whispered modern accounts, have claimed to experience a glimpse, a fleeting, terrifying brush with the legendary Weeping Woman herself. These are not merely tales told around a crackling fire. They are deeply personal encounters, shared in hushed tones that linger in the memory like a cold, damp mist. Most often, they speak of her spectral presence near the very places of her eternal torment, the shadowy bends of rivers, the still, reflective surfaces of lakes, or the quiet, winding paths of forgotten canals. Imagine, if you can, the chill that races down your spine when, in the dead of night, you catch a peripheral movement, a shimmer of white, indistinct and translucent, against the backdrop of dark trees and swirling fog. Her form, they say, is almost always shrouded in an ethereal white garment, a gown that seems to flow and dissipate like the very mist it emerges from. Her figure elongated, her movements sorrowful and slow, as if she carries the weight of 1,000 years of grief. Her face, if ever truly seen, is a mask of pure anguish, often veiled by long, dark hair or simply blurred by the ghostly translucence that defines her. But it is not just the sight of her that chills. It is the sound, that piercing, heart-wrenching wail of "Ay, mis hijos," carried on a cold breeze, sometimes seeming to come from directly behind you, other times echoing from an impossible distance, a mournful cry that rattles the very soul and speaks of an unimaginable, unending torment. These repeated sightings, consistently described across generations and regions, serve not only as chilling testament to her enduring legend, but also reinforce her cautionary role within communities, a testament to the deep cultural resonance of this spectral figure. If these timeless tales of spectral encounters and the mysteries that linger at the edge of human perception stir something within your own spirit, inspiring a sense of wonder and perhaps a touch of fear, then consider joining our circle of lore enthusiasts by subscribing.
We have many more stories that weave through the shadows and light of our shared history. To encounter her is to witness a profound sorrow, a living, breathing testament to a mother's eternal regret, an image both terrifying and deeply, tragically sorrowful, a ghost forever bound to her watery grave, forever seeking, forever crying in the moonlit mist, a haunting echo of a colonial past and an undying legend that still walks among us.
Her true curse, the agonizing core of her eternal damnation, is the perpetual, futile search for what can never be found. Her drowned children, lost to the cold, unforgiving embrace of the river. Night after night, or when the mist clings low to the water's surface, her spectral form glides along the banks. Her eyes, if they can be discerned through the veil of her sorrow, scanning the shadowy currents, desperately hoping to glimpse a familiar face, to touch a lost hand. It is a quest without end, a torment without reprieve, a mother's love transformed into an inescapable, haunting agony that binds her to the watery veins of the land. With every sorrowful movement, every ethereal drift through the reeds, there escapes from her spectral lips that piercing, guttural cry that has echoed through the centuries. Ay, mis hijos, oh, my children. A lament so steeped in profound maternal anguish and unbearable regret that it seems to tear at the very fabric of the night itself. This is not merely a ghost's wail. It is the sound of a broken heart, endlessly searching, endlessly pining, an auditory testament to the depths of a mother's love, twisted by unspeakable tragedy and unforgivable sin. The very air around her, thick with damp earth in the scent of decay, seems to hum with her despair, the constant heartbreaking call, a mournful lullaby to the empty spaces in her spectral arms. This ceaseless seeking, ethnographers and folklorists have noted, transforms her into more than just a ghost. She becomes a living symbol of ultimate loss, a powerful, tragic reminder woven into the communal memory, influencing tales that speak to the primal fears of parenthood and the crushing weight of remorse. If these timeless tales of wandering spirits, born from ancient sorrow and colonial echoes, stir a sense of wonder and eerie contemplation within you, consider joining our circle of storytellers and lore enthusiasts by subscribing. There is a vast, shadowy tapestry of human experience waiting to be explored. Her eternal suffering is not a static thing. It is a dynamic, unending act of searching, her phantom steps forever tracing the paths by the river, her voice a relentless echo across the moonlit water, a constant, chilling reminder that some sorrows transcend death itself, forever bound to the earthly realm in an agonizing, unyielding quest for the lost. It is in the deepest hush of night, when the moon hangs high, a pale, sorrowful eye in the vast, inky canvas above, that the natural world seems to hold its breath for her. Along the quiet, winding courses of rivers, by the still, dark mirrors of lakes, and through the shadowed paths that trace ancient canals, the very air itself seems to thicken with an expectant dread.
The wind, which during the day merely sighs through the trees, takes on a different voice after dusk, carrying whispers that are not quite human. A soft, mournful breath that rustles the dry leaves like a chorus of spectral sighs. Shadows, elongated and distorted by the soft, cinematic moonlight, dance and stretch across the earth, transforming familiar trees into twisted, gnarled figures, each one seemingly poised to reveal a hidden, ghostly presence. The gentle lapping of the water against the bank, a soothing sound in daylight, becomes something more ominous in the profound silence, a rhythmic, subtle pulse that seems to draw the eye, tempting one to peer deeper into its murky secrets, perhaps for a glimpse of an ethereal white form gliding just above its surface. This is the stage upon which La Llorona plays out her eternal torment, a natural landscape imbued with the palpable weight of her sorrow and the chilling echo of her ceaseless search for her lost children. Her presence isn't always a direct sighting. Often it's a profound atmospheric shift, a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, the distant, unmistakable scent of damp earth and decay, or that undeniable feeling of being watched, of not being alone in the vast moonlit expanse. These subtle sensory cues, often preceding a full encounter, or simply serving as a powerful, unsettling reminder, demonstrate how deeply woven her legend is into the very environment of the communities that tell her tale, reinforcing her role as a persistent, sorrowful guardian of the night. If these tales, these whispers from the moonlit shadows that dance between folklore and fear, stir a primal curiosity within your heart, consider joining our circle of listeners by subscribing. There's always more truth lurking in the shadows of legend. Her story becomes one with the landscape itself, a dramatic embodiment of perpetual grief, her wails sometimes indistinguishable from the moan of the wind, her spectral form easily mistaken for a wispy tendril of mist rising from the water. So, the next time you find yourself alone by a moonlit river, with only the rustling leaves and the ancient water for company, listen closely to the whispers on the wind and watch the shadows as they stretch, for you might just be standing on the threshold of her timeless, sorrowful world, where she still wanders, forever crying, forever bound to the watery veins of the land. From the very first hushed whispers around ancient village fires, through the sprawling tapestry of colonial New Spain, and right up to the flickering screens of our modern world, the chilling legend of La Llorona has endured, a testament to its profound, undeniable power. This isn't merely a tale, it's a living, breathing thread woven through generations, passed from parent to child, grandparent to grandchild, always with a solemn warning in its telling. While certain details might shift like the river's course, a different name for the fateful river, a slightly altered motive for Maria's despair, the core, agonizing heart of the story remains stubbornly, terrifyingly constant. The image of the spectral woman in white, her form indistinct against the moonlit water, and that heart-wrenching, soul-piercing cry of, "Ay, mis hijos, oh, my children." These elements are immutable, burned into the collective memory. It's this very continuity, this resilience across centuries and countless retellings that ethnographers and folklore archives have meticulously documented, underscoring its deep cultural significance as a cautionary tale. Her endless search, her perpetual maternal anguish and regret, these are the truths that transcend the embellishments of any single storyteller, serving as a powerful, dramatic reminder of the tragic consequences of despair, infidelity, and the paramount importance of safeguarding the young. It's a legacy carried not just by words, but by the very atmosphere of a moonlit riverbank, the sudden chill in the air, the unexplainable rustle in the reeds, binding communities in a shared, primal understanding of fear and sorrow. If these deep-rooted stories, these echoes of human tragedy and supernatural warning that persist through the ages, stir a sense of wonder and eerie contemplation within your own spirit, inspiring you to delve further into the rich tapestry of global folklore, then consider joining our circle of explorers by subscribing. There are countless more tales of shadows and light waiting to be unearthed and shared around our virtual campfire. This enduring narrative, steeped in both the historical echoes of colonial-era societal anxieties and the timeless human experience of loss, ensures that La Llorona, the weeping woman, continues her mournful vigil, her legend an eternal whisper on the wind, forever binding the past to the present, forever crying by the river's edge. Even as our world hurtles forward, draped in the glow of city lights and the ceaseless hum of bustling streets, the ancient fears stirred by La Llorona refuse to fade, clinging stubbornly to the watery veins that still crisscross our landscapes, from the grand rivers that carve through remote wilderness to the quiet, sometimes overlooked canals that weave through the heart of our most modern cities. This isn't a ghost confined to dusty history books or forgotten rural lanes. Her legend, passed down through countless retellings, has proven remarkably adaptable, finding new corners to haunt and new ears to chill. People still whisper of glimpsing a figure in white near the murky banks of urban waterways, her ethereal form sometimes mistaken for a trick of the city fog, her mournful cry, "Ay, mis hijos," almost lost amidst the nightly symphony of traffic and distant sirens. Yet, for those who truly hear it, it cuts through the modern din with an ancient heart-stopping clarity, a sound that speaks of a sorrow far older than any concrete edifice. In rural communities, of course, the belief remains as strong as ever, a constant hushed warning against the dangers of the dark and the water, ensuring that children know not to stray. But even in our most contemporary settings, the legend serves a similar, subtle purpose, a lingering, cautionary note about the fragility of life, the consequences of despair, and the enduring power of maternal love, however tragically twisted. Folklorists and cultural studies scholars often emphasize how such enduring narratives adapt across generations and environments, proving their timeless relevance, acting as a deep-seated communal conscience. Her presence, whether seen or simply felt, transforms these modern waterways into liminal spaces, connecting them inextricably to the colonial past and the primal fears of loss and regret. If these tales, these enduring whispers from the shadows that bridge ancient fears with our contemporary lives, stir a sense of awe and a healthy dose of unease within your spirit,
then consider joining our circle of lore keepers by subscribing. There are countless more stories waiting to emerge from the twilight, stories that remind us how thin the veil between worlds can sometimes be. So, the next time you find yourself by a canal late at night, or walk near a river where the city lights glint on the water, listen closely. Beyond the clamor, beyond the rush, for La Llorona may still be there, a spectral echo of an ancient sorrow, her cry carried on the modern breeze, forever searching, forever weeping. Once Maria was irrevocably gone, swallowed by the grief and the water's cold embrace. Only one thing remained, a sound. Her human cries of anguish, though piercing, were nothing compared to what followed, what truly marked her as a being condemned to wander the in-between. They say, in hushed tones around campfires like ours, that the very first utterance to escape her transformed spectral lips was not a sob nor a scream, but a wail, a desolate, drawn-out keening that seemed to rip the very fabric of the night itself, chilling the air and rattling the very leaves on the trees. It was a sound unlike any heard before in the ancient valleys and along the winding rivers, carrying with it the unbearable weight of her transgression, the chilling echo of her lost children, and the eternal torment of her soul. This was the birth of the cry, the signature lament of La Llorona, a sound that would forever pierce the silence and settle deep in the bones of those unlucky enough to hear it. Imagine, if you can, standing on a misty riverbank, the air thick with damp earth and the scent of distant pines, when a sound, both near and impossibly far, drifts to you, carried on a cold breeze. It's a sound that isn't quite human, yet holds every ounce of human anguish, a piercing, mournful shriek that carries the words, or perhaps just the agonizing feeling of, "Ay, mis hijos," "Oh, my children," a cry so steeped in an unimaginable sorrow that it settles deep in your spirit, refusing to be shaken. From that moment, that first terrible wail, her suffering became eternal, a terrifying introduction to her spectral existence that binds her to the waterways. It's a cry that ethnographers and folklorists have noted as a consistent, defining feature of the legend across Latin American cultures, a sonic warning woven into the very heart of this ancient, cautionary tale. If these stories, these whispers from the shadows, captivate your imagination and make you wonder what else lies hidden in the twilight corners of our world, then consider joining our growing circle of listeners by subscribing. There are countless more tales waiting to be told. This chilling lament, this endless search, became her curse, her purpose, to wander the rivers and lakes where her children vanished, her spectral form perpetually seeking, her voice a perpetual heart-wrenching echo of her crime. It is a cry not just of grief, but of profound, inescapable regret, a sound that reminds every listener of the terrible price of unchecked despair, a haunting melody that resonates from the colonial shadows to the present day, a constant, chilling presence in the quiet of the night. So, when the wind howls just so, or the river whispers a little too loudly in the darkness, listen closely, for her sorrowful wail might just be carried on the next breath of cold air, a timeless testament to a mother's eternal anguish. Her enduring presence, that spectral flicker in the moonlit mist, that chilling wail carried on the night wind, it is far more than just the manifestation of a ghost. It is a perpetual, agonizing reminder of tragic consequences and the profound, immeasurable cost of utter desperation. When that mournful cry, "Ay, mis hijos, oh my children," drifts across the water, it is not merely a sound, but a haunting symbol, an auditory testament to unresolved pain, a raw, primal grief lost in time and forever echoing through the fabric of the land. This is the very essence of her eternal torment, a mother's boundless sorrow transformed into a chilling caution to all who hear it, a warning that transcends the boundaries of generations and language. Imagine the weight of that sound, a lament so steeped in regret and heartbreak that it feels almost tangible, pressing down upon the listener, stirring a deep ancestral fear of loss and the terrible paths desperation can lead one down. Her story, passed down through countless retellings, serves as a stark, dramatic lesson, a spectral sermon whispered in the shadows, reminding communities of the delicate balance between love and despair, and the devastating ripple effects of actions born from an anguished heart. Indeed, folklorists often point to La Llorona as a prime example of how narratives of the supernatural profoundly shape societal morals and contribute to collective historical memory, providing emotional guidance in ways no simple decree ever could. Her figure, shrouded in white and forever bound to the waterways where her children vanished, is not just a specter. She is the embodiment of an ancient fear, a cultural touchstone that binds the past to the present with threads of sorrow and warning. If these deep-seated stories, these echoes from a time when folklore shaped the very way people understood the world and themselves, ignite a spark of wonder and a shiver of unease within your own spirit, then consider joining our growing circle of listeners and seekers of tales by subscribing. There are countless more mysteries waiting to be unveiled. Her wail, therefore, is a timeless lament, a mournful song of perpetual search and a chilling caution carried on every whisper of the wind that sweeps over the rivers and lakes, forever reminding us of the profound emotional cost of desperation and the tragic consequences that can haunt a soul long after life has faded, leaving behind only an unending, sorrowful cry in the night. Now, as our own fire begins to gently fade, its embers glowing like watchful, dying eyes in the deepening night, and the last of its warmth slowly recedes into the cool embrace of the darkness, we are left with a lingering, unsettling question, one that has echoed through the centuries, whispered from generation to generation. Does La Llorona, the weeping woman, truly still roam the riverbanks, her spectral form shimmering in the moonlight, her heart-wrenching, sorrowful cries carried on the night air? The tale is old, ancient even, predating many of the landmarks we see around us, yet it clings to the very landscape, a persistent whisper on the wind, forever refusing to be relegated to mere folklore. For countless souls who have walked these lands, the question is not one of belief, but of experience. A sudden chill by the water's edge, an inexplicable rustle in the reeds, or that unmistakable piercing wail that seems to rise from the very depths of a mother's eternal anguish. Ay, mis hijos, oh, my children. It is in these moments, these fleeting brushes with the inexplicable, that the legend truly comes alive, settling deep in the hearts and minds of those who hear her story, ensuring her sorrowful vigil continues. Even in our modern age, with all its logic and light, there remains a space for the ancient fears, for the lingering mysteries that refuse to be explained away. For countless souls who have walked these lands, the question is not one of belief, but of experience. A sudden chill by the water's edge, an inexplicable rustle in the reeds, or that unmistakable piercing wail that seems to rise from the very depths of a mother's eternal anguish. Ay, mis hijos, oh, my children. It is in these moments, these fleeting brushes with the inexplicable, that the legend truly comes alive, settling deep in the hearts and minds of those who hear her story, ensuring her sorrowful vigil continues. Even in our modern age, with all its logic and light, there remains a space for the ancient fears, for the lingering mysteries that refuse to be explained away. The enduring power of such narratives, ethnographers tell us, lies precisely in this capacity to adapt, to resonate across cultures and time, serving as a powerful, albeit terrifying, cautionary tale. Her story, woven into the fabric of the land, serves as a constant, subtle reminder of tragic consequences, of unchecked despair, and the enduring, haunting power of regret. If these deep-seated legends, these echoes from a time when the veil between worlds felt thinner, awaken a sense of primal wonder and a shiver of delicious unease within your spirit, and you yearn to explore more of the world's most captivating tales, then consider joining our growing circle of lore seekers by subscribing. There are countless more whispers from the shadows waiting to be shared around our virtual campfire. So, as you make your way back into the quiet of the night, perhaps past a winding stream or a silent lake, listen closely to the whispers on the wind and watch the shifting shadows, for the question lingers, keeping the legend alive. And who is to say that her sorrowful wail won't drift to you, a chilling testament that La Llorona still cries by the water's edge, forever searching, forever bound to her unending grief. And so, as the last embers of our fire wink and fade into the cool, encroaching darkness, and the soft sounds of the night, the rustle of distant leaves, the subtle murmur of unseen water begin to fill the space where our voices once held sway, the tale of La Llorona draws to a close. Yet, to say it concludes feels almost disingenuous, for a legend so deeply rooted in the very soul of a people, so intricately woven into the landscape itself, never truly ends. Instead, it transforms, settling into the quiet corners of our minds, a chilling memory that lingers long after the final word is spoken. The image of that spectral woman in white, her form indistinct against the moonlit mist, and especially that piercing, heart-wrenching wail of "Ay, mis hijos, oh, my children." These are not easily forgotten. They echo in the imagination, a phantom sound carried on the very breath of the night, a timeless testament to maternal anguish and the desperate, unending search for redemption that can never be found. For those who have grown up with her story, or for those who have only just heard it for the first time around a flickering flame, her enduring presence transforms every dark waterway, every mist-shrouded riverbank, into a place pregnant with ancient fear and profound sorrow. It's a powerful thing, isn't it? how a story can so deeply imprint itself upon our senses, becoming almost a part of the world around us. The legend of La Llorona is more than just a ghost story. It is a profound cultural touchstone, a cautionary whisper against the dangers of despair, infidelity, and the tragic consequences that can haunt a soul across centuries. If these ancient stories, these echoes from a past that still shape our present, stir a sense of wonder, a shiver of unease, and a hunger for more tales from the shadows, then consider joining our circle of lore enthusiasts by subscribing. There are countless more mysteries waiting to be unveiled. Her wail remains, therefore, not just a sound, but a symbol of unresolved pain, of maternal love twisted by tragedy, and a perpetual caution to all who walk near the water's edge after dusk, reminding us that some sorrows transcend death itself, forever bound to the earthly realm. So, as you head into the deep, quiet dark, listen closely to the whispers on the wind and watch the shadows as they dance, for the memory of La Llorona's wail and the lingering chill of her presence will undoubtedly stay with you, a testament to the enduring grip of this powerful, sorrowful legend.